Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me on Mitts Talks. So, this is the episode that a lot of people have been asking, when is it going to come out? Mitts, when are you going to do this episode on father's rights? And it's been a long process. I'm sorry about that. But here you guys go, the father's rights. Now, I will tell you that I'm not going to put all my information in one episode because it's going to be way too long. And then the other part of it is that I don't want people who are looking at this episode to look for specific information to have to go through the whole video and have to kind of dig it out. So every episode is going to kind of have a different title, a different focus. And then you can choose as a viewer if what you want to be able to extract from that to potentially give you information during what you're going through. So this one episode is going to pretty much just give you guys what I've learned is the difference between the court system, and then why I feel fathers' rights are broken, and then lightly touch on the lawyer selection process. That is basically what this first episode is going to be about, guys. I'm also going to be sharing with you through the episode what I went through, and again, I don't want anyone to kind of be like, oh my God, that's horrible. I can't believe you went through that. Like, no, it's literally about like, hey, it's tough. But you know what? Thank you for paving it forward, because then someone out there needs some of this information, because Lord knows when I went through it, I would have probably have loved an episode like this or something like this instead of searching everything on the Googles. But before we jump into this episode, a couple of things I'm going to also share is the intention behind this is not to throw shade at anyone, specifically my ex-wife who's a mother of my son. That is not the intention behind this. So I want to make that very clear. Her and I have moved past the whole difficult time of our lives when it was divorce and child custody, and we are just looking to continue to move forward for the love for our son. It is not about that anything else. So please keep that in mind. I'm not throwing shade at my ex. Now, with that said, do I believe fathers have rights in the United States? No. I do not. I do not believe fathers have rights in the United States. I think that is an outdated, broken system that you, as a father who may be going through this right now, is paying the price of previous fathers in the past, his bad mistakes, and then now you are the one who have to actually pay for that. And I will give you an example why. Statistics show that when you turn around and you are now fighting for custody of a child, 51% of the court systems are already believing that the child should be with the mother versus the father. I'll repeat that again. When you are now entering the child custody process, 51% of the system already feels that the mother should already be the primary residence or the primary person where the child lives, not the father. Now that is a fucked up system, and mainly because of the fact that you are now starting at a disadvantage where you are going into this process already trying to prove that you are a good person that should have the equal or shared rights that the mom does. But that's not how it works. Then the worst part about it, right? Now you're sitting in there saying, hey, wait, I'm a good dad. And then mom is sitting there like, no, well, they already say that 51% goes to me, already saying I should be the person. So now you're digging dirt to try to diminish mom's character so you can make you look better. And that causes feud and conflict. So again, I think that is one of the first examples I can give you that where I feel this system is definitely outdated and broken. Both parents should be entering at an even playing field, and then at that point be able to discuss how they feel, where they stand, and who they are as characters, as parents. But again, this system is broken, and in my personal opinion, outdated. Where a lot of people sit out there talking about rights on this, equal rights on that, equality on this. Someone needs to sit there and talk about the equality of fathers' rights. That's the truth about it. Because when you're doing this process, you're spending money. And when I tell you you're not spending a couple of $100, you're spending a couple of $1,000. And if you're as passionate as I was, where I refused to allow anyone to tell me to dictate the time that I was going to be sharing with my son, is why I fought so hard. I didn't care how much I was spending. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew, that my son knew, that I would do whatever it takes to be involved on my terms or what the system felt was fair. And again, like I said, it is not fair. So that's just a bit of that part of it. I will also tell you guys, my divorce/custody battle was in Supreme Court. It was not in family court. It was in Supreme Court. What are the differences between that, Mitts? I don't understand, right? I'm not in this. I don't get it yet. So Supreme Court deals with parents that are married but are going through a divorce. Through the divorce process, while everything is being separated and settled, child custody comes into play. That is where Supreme Court comes into play. If you are married and you have a child, you're in Supreme Court. Now, if you're not married, you guys are going through family court. That is basically the two differences between the court system. I dealt through Supreme Court, not through family court. Every time I made a mistake and I was like, oh my God, mom did this and I'm going to family court, they would be like, oh, you have a case in Supreme Court. Bye, go back to Supreme Court. So again, if you have a child but you are not married, you are dealing with your situation in family court. If you are married and you are going through a divorce, Supreme Court is where you're going to be dealing with your process. So I hope that kind of clarifies a bit for people, because a lot of it is costly if you're going the wrong directions and then you're making a lot of phone calls to your lawyers. Now, if you are going through the divorce process like I did, you are served at a certain point in the divorce. Either you are the one requesting for the divorce or you're the one being served and given the divorce papers. Now, it is imperative that you understand that when you are served court papers, divorce papers, you have 20 days to reply to those papers, 20 days. So what that basically means is if you fail to reply to the act of divorce, you default to whatever requests were asked. Give you an example. If your ex-wife is asking, or your future ex-wife is asking for the house, the cars, 20% child support, and I want this and this, and you don't reply back within 20 days, you give it to them. That's it. You fail to reply. Now, if you so that really kind of stresses you out. And I'll tell you a piece of advice that someone gave me as I started going through this process, because I will not lie to you, it was very emotionally difficult for me. Very emotionally difficult for me. I was dealing with the destruction of my family falling apart. And then someone telling me trying to dictate the time I'm going to spend with my son. And then the other part of it was at the same time being forced to have to deal with this deadline. So as someone told me, you have to enter this process with a business mentality, very logical, operational, for some people who may understand that better, and not emotional. Sometimes our emotions are great, but sometimes they cloud our judgment, and then we lead them with our heart, and then we kind of prolong this process. I can't sit there and cry about, what's going on right now because I had 20 days to reply back to this, or I'm giving my future ex everything she wanted. So then comes the lawyer selection process. I learned through this process that you need to find the right lawyer, and you need to make sure that you understand what kind of lawyer you want. So I went to this law firm that was all about fathers' rights. Fathers' rights, fathers' rights, fathers' rights. I was like, man, that's me, bro. That's totally what I'm going through. I need someone who's going to advocate for my father's rights. And I went to this law firm, paid a ton of money, and when I tell you my first lawyer, he literally was a teddy bear. He talked all the good game, but man, this guy was literally getting his face kicked in the courtroom left and right. So I was totally taken back. And then I dropped my lawyer and I went to another lawyer in the midst of that process because I didn't feel like this person was getting the job done. And I will say that when you're thinking about a lawyer, you want a lawyer that's going to be level-headed and is going to try to enter this in a way that you guys are going to finish this process quickly and what you can be as what you're all comfortable living with. But you also want a lawyer that's going to be able to jump in the ring and fight for you when they feel like there is no way that you guys can solve this problem. You can solve the situation amicably, and you have to go into the ring and fight in the courtroom. You want that gladiator. And the reason why I tell you that is what you may not yet have realized is when you're in the courtroom process, you're not talking. You, the father or the mother, are not talking. Your lawyers are doing the talking for you. And so when you're sitting there and you're talking to your lawyer or in between court dates, you're like, yeah, I got this and I got this on them and this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to get you. Don't worry about it. And then you're like, when I go to court, I'm going to tell the judge they did this and they did that and they did this. And then you just realize that you're sitting there the whole time and your lawyer's doing it. And you're like, oh, don't, okay, I can't talk. All right, cool. Yeah, you keep doing it. All right, don't worry about it. So that's why the lawyer selection process is very important. Do your research. Don't just go based off of someone's recommendation. I personally believe that you should do your research. Most of the time, consultations are free. But the one thing you want to realize is that you want to find that person who is in the middle ground, who could do both roles. You don't want someone automatically who's always looking to pick a fight. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the person who you get that always wants to pick a fight is the one that's going to cost you a lot of money because they make this process even more. They want to draw it out. Lawyers want to draw this process out. Some of these lawyers are like, hey, the cheapest lawyer I found in my experience was no less than $350 an hour. $350, and that was a cheap lawyer. The cheapest I found. The other thing about it is that think about what that looks like. You're not just, and then you're paying a retainer fee up front. So just to say, it's just like when you put a security deposit down. Hey, you're my lawyer now. So what they basically do is every time you meet, every time you talk, every email you send, every time you call them, every time any of those communications take place with your lawyer, that's automatically just coming out of that retainer fee. So if you pay $2,000 and they're basically you're communicating like a wildfire because you and your ex are fighting like crazy, what's gonna end up happening? The lawyers keep taking it out, and then when that money's done, hey, what's going on, man? Just want to follow back up and need more money because this process has to continue going. So just think about that. That right there is kind of like, oh man, that's insane. The other thing you want to think about is where does the most of the money get spent in when you have a lawyer? How do you accrue so much of a high bill? And where you see the money is usually in the court dates, because when you're sitting in court, you're paying for your lawyer's transportation time, and then you're waiting for your case to be brought up, and then you're in the courtroom with the lawyers battling it out, and then you're recapping with your lawyer, and then you call it a day. So throughout that whole process, and then now that lawyer is charging $350 for every hour they're there. And then just to say, for example, mom turns around and says, oh, I took the child a day I wasn't supposed to, and, I don't care. You're like, oh yeah, all right, fine. I'm calling the lawyer. Hey, lawyer, I'm going to tell you what's going on right now. They'll be like, oh, sure, I hear you. Yeah, we'll bring it up next court date. No worries. Sure, yeah, all right. By the way, that was about $50 for that conversation. And then you get it in your next statement. Just things to think about, guys. Things to think about. This is why I say there is a way that you can resolve a process amicably. Try to go for that. Another thing I will tell you guys is when you have that lawyer selection process, and I say that you want to make sure they have that two sides of being a gladiator and being also at the same time someone who could try to mediate it, is you don't want to miss opportunities to go, especially as a father, when you're trying to fight for your rights to say, hey, I do deserve more than this basic visitation every other weekend thing. And what I mean by that is, right, what ended up happening to me once is I was going out of the country on a time that fell on my parenting time. So I was at the beginning stages. We had a temporary settlement written up, not a final settlement. And the temporary settlement stated that, when on Wednesdays, if the child's with dad, then the child's with dad. But I was leaving town on a Wednesday and I wasn't going to be around. So I was like, oh, you know what? He can hang out with my brothers. That's fine. No worries at all. And that's what, he wanted. Mom caught whiff of this, and the lawyer was like, no, that's not in the paperwork. Hey, you got to get the child to mom. And I'm like, well, that's not my mom. That's not the court date. That's not her time. But the court's like, doesn't make a difference. You got to get the child to mom. So extremely frustrated. Again, felt like, man, this is unfair, but fine. But then what ended up happening is mom was going away at one point, and I was like, I found out, and I'm like calling my lawyer like, hey, mom's out in town, I want the kid back. Same thing that happened to me, got to happen to them. She's not going to be here. Lawyer was a little bit late to the party. And the lawyer was late to the party, and it was just like I didn't get the same thing. So my lawyer missed that opportunity. I was extremely frustrated, and I kind of felt like, man, why was this passed? And the difference between it, her lawyer was more aggressive than mine. And that is why it happened. So you want to take a moment to think about when you're choosing that lawyer, the right lawyer. The person's going to be your advocate to what you want to do, to what you're trying to achieve. And I will tell you what you're trying, when I talk about trying to achieve something, again, understand, yeah, I do feel that the system is broken. Yes, I do feel that it's unfair. It did cost me over $50,000 to get to where I'm at right now. And for some people, they want to know where I'm at, right? I went into this process wanting full custody. I wanted full custody of my son. I am 100% an invested, loving, involved father, as well as I know that my ex loves our son tremendously as well. I don't want to take that away from them. But I wanted full custody. I was like, no, I have an amazing relationship with my kid, and I don't want to end up being weekend dad, which is what I knew growing up. So I realized after a certain period of time that I kept fighting. And, I remember one day in a court date, a lawyer had told me, my lawyer couldn't make it, and another lawyer stepped in, and she had asked me, like, what is your goal? And I said, I want full custody of my son. And, they're like, that's a very hard ask, and a very expensive ask. And, you may want to find the middle ground and what you're comfortable with. So we ended up settling for 50-50. She didn't get full custody, and nor did she did not get full custody, and nor did I get full custody. We both got 50-50 custody. And that is what we had to accept. Now, my ex is not, a substance abuser. My ex was not a deadbeat mom. She was not all about neglecting our son. So that is something that you want to pay attention to. But the reason why I brought this up earlier, why I think the system is fucked up, is that you will turn around if the mom is a substance abuser. If the mother is not a substance abuser, if she's not neglectful, if she is not abusive, then there's no way you're ever going to get full custody. I thought that was kind of like, that's crazy. But then dad is over here trying to say, I want more than weekend visitation. Okay, court's like, prove it to me why you are like that. How much you make? Are you consistent with job stability? You know, do you have a residence for your kid? Do you have a room for your child? And it's like, you turn around like, really? I got to show you all this and prove how much more hard it is. But mom already had to get out of jail free. Like, no, I'm a mom. I'm the mother of the child, so I don't have to do that. More legwork for dad to have to prove his importance, less legwork for mom. And I think that is one of the reasons why I think the system is broken. I think the system needs to be reevaluated. You know, we shouldn't have to wait for major situations to blow up in the world to be able to shine some light on that. But it is important that people understand that if you are a male, if you are a father going into this process, you're going to have to work harder to be able to prove your rights and defend your rights. And for my personal opinion, fight for your rights to not have some system tell you how much time you get to spend with your son. And I think, or your child. And I think that is the reason why I'm very passionate about this. That is the reason why I think something like this needed to be shared. You know, the lawyer selection process is important. The difference between Supreme Court versus family court is important. You understanding that is important. And you understanding that you have to remove the emotions. Be emotional with your kid. Remind your kid that you love them. Because you have to understand that this is a difficult process for them, but you have to think logically. You have to be able to enter this in more of a business mentality, and I cannot stress that enough to people. Enter this as a business mentality, because your failure to just continue leading with your heart is going to leave you with mistakes. And then wrapping up the end of this episode, guys, I will tell you guys that if you have the opportunity, try to avoid as much ugliness as possible. I think, I was very adamant about fighting for my son. I was passionate, it was everything to me. But I realized at a certain point that through all my fighting, through all of our fighting, my ex and I, we always wanted what was best for our son and what we both wanted for best for our son. But, this process is difficult. It's taxing emotionally, not only to both of you, but it's also to your child. Fast forward, but at a certain point, we kept battling it out. The court's like, we're gonna have to potentially take this to some form of a trial at that time, and your child has to get a lawyer, and your child has to talk to somebody about how they're feeling. Think about all that exposure that you're doing to them. So where you may feel that you're doing everything possible to give them what the best you possibly can, you expose them to so much difficult moments. And then, I don't think any of us want any of our children to sit in court one day and be like, I want to live with mom, or I want to live with dad, or this is what happens, or I can't talk to mom or dad, because then they're going to use that against each other in the courtrooms. And the reality is that that's what ends up happening with these lawyers. That's what ends up happening in the system. It is a reason why people say sometimes that divorce is a business, and marriage is a business and divorce is an industry. And again, I spent over $50,000 in my process. I don't regret it. I think one thing I hope that my son knows down the road is that I did whatever it takes to be able to fight for my time with him and not dictated by anybody. But I also know that I'm now sitting here almost 2 years later. You're attached to this person that you have this child with, and you have to think about that. Do you want to live the rest of your lives always raising your child thinking my mom and dad hate each other? And, if there is a way, guys, everyone to be able to resolve this situation amicably, it hurts no matter what. A significant change like this hurts no matter what. But I think that you have to take a moment and think about, what are you really doing to ensure that your child has a happy life? So this is the episode. That concludes this episode of Midst Talks, guys. The next one, I'll shoot it out and I'll let you guys know the topic. Check me out on Instagram. If you like what you saw today, please subscribe. If you know someone's going through something very similar, go ahead and suggest this episode. Go ahead and suggest that. And I'm always open to questions or comments or anything. Feel free. You can find me on Instagram on Midst_Talks. And, again, I appreciate all of you guys for watching this. It is a very important story that I'm trying to share. And I really hope that people out there are listening. Thank you guys. I appreciate you and have a great time.